What's up everyone, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well, and today we're going to be taking a look at the OnePlus 7 Pro and comparing it directly against probably one of the best deals in the smartphone game right now with the Google Pixel 3a XL. Now, even though there's about a $200 price gap between these two, we're going to talk about some of the things that you pay for when you get the 7 Pro compared to the scaled down, more budget-friendly Pixel 3a. Now, the first thing I have to address with the Google Pixel A XL is that it is a scaled down version of the original Google Pixel 3, so it doesn't have the same IP68 certification. It's not the same level of build quality. The resolution on the screen and size is a little bit smaller, as well as the internal hardware is slightly underpowered compared to the Google Pixel, and definitely underpowered compared to the OnePlus 7 Pro. Now, apart from those factors, you can also see the design doesn't incorporate the camera notch as the original Pixel 3 did, so it definitely looks a lot more streamlined, although you do have fatter bezels as a result of lack of that notch. OnePlus 7 Pro is probably the most slimline, sleekest looking smartphone to date, due to the fact that it has a motorized pop-up camera, so you have no notch. It's ultra thin bezels at the side, top, bottom, and it's kind of what you would expect a smartphone to look in the year 2019. Now, footprint wise, it is slightly more heftier in terms of weight and thickness. It comes in around 206 grams and about 8.8 millimeters in terms of thickness, versus the 3a XL is only 8.2 millimeters in terms of thickness and only weighs about 168 grams. In terms of feel in the hand, the Google Pixel 3 XL actually feels pretty good. It feels pretty durable as well, even though it doesn't have any IP68 official certification for dust and water resistance. The OnePlus 7 Pro definitely feels a little bit more premium in the hand, and it has an aluminum frame construction as well as glass front to back. Now, in terms of the displays themselves, certainly that's the centerpiece on the 7 Pro, thanks to its pop-up camera. By the way, the pop-up camera itself, OnePlus says that it's rated for hundreds of thousands of cycles, so you could use this thing for many years without having too many issues with the motorized system that's built inside. It has to be a super small motorized system to fit in this tiny little phone, but it's pretty impressive nonetheless. And as a result of that, you get this amazing immersive ultra thin bezel display. It's even thinner than what you would expect with the new Samsung Galaxy S10 smartphones. Now, basically, both smartphones have an OLED display, so they can represent over 16 million colors with an infinite dynamic contrast ratio. In terms of display size, we have a larger display on the OnePlus, about 6.67 inches, and it has a screen-to-body ratio of roughly 88.1%, thanks to those ultra-thin bezels, versus you're looking at a 6-inch display with a screen-to-body ratio about 26.3, and the phone overall definitely looks pretty dated compared to the brand new ultra thin bezels that we have on the OnePlus, but the resolution isn't too far behind. Basically, we have a PPI count of about 402 on the Pixel 3a XL, versus we're looking at 516 on the OnePlus, and the whole experience that I get with the 7 Pro is very similar to the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus that we encountered a couple of months back, which actually had a slightly lower native resolution, but because it has a slightly smaller screen, you have a PPI count about 522. Now, the big addition on the OnePlus 7 Pro is the fact that you have a 90 Hz refresh rate on the display. At this point, once you've experienced a smartphone at 90 Hz refresh rate, it's really hard to go back to 60 Hz because your eyes adjust to that faster rate. You get less motion blur. Everything feels a lot more fluid, dynamic, and it's especially great for watching high frame rate videos as well as playing games, and just using your smartphone from a day-to-day aspect. It gives you less eye strain based on my experience as well. Remember, a couple of months back, we did a comparison with the Asus ROG gaming phone as well as the Razer phone, which had above 90 Hz refresh rate, and it made a world of difference in playing games, and just using your device on a day-to-day basis becomes a lot more enjoyable. The only downside is that it does take a little bit more GPU and CPU cycles to run that faster refresh rate, which is going to tax the battery life a little bit, and we'll actually get to the battery performance. Luckily, on this device, you can actually switch between 60 Hz standard refresh rate or the 90 Hz, which is pretty cool. Apart from the refresh rate, I think in terms of resolution and color rendition and overall sharpness, the Pixel 3a's display is certainly pretty darn good, especially for the price, and I have no major complaints in terms of the viewing experience. It's certainly up there with what you're going to get with the modern day iPhones, a lot of the current generation Samsung products, and other premium grade smartphones. Now, in terms of CPU and internal hardware, that is a different story. We're using the Snapdragon 670 processor, which is fairly underpowered and a little bit dated compared to the Snapdragon 855 that we find in most premium smartphones, including the 7 Pro. So if you take a look at our Antutu benchmark, we're essentially getting almost past double the performance on the 855 compared to the 670. Same thing kind of goes for the Geekbench benchmark results, where we're getting multi-core performance and single-core performance at almost double the throughput on the OnePlus compared to the Pixel 3a. And same thing with the base mark. We're getting around 25 overall points versus 5162 overall score on the OnePlus. Now, in terms of the camera performance, this is actually where the Pixel 3a really excels at in one particular area, which is low light photography, and just general stills photography is fairly stellar. Even though we have a single 12.2 megapixel camera compared to the triple camera array that we have on the OnePlus, not to mention a pretty darn awesome pop-up camera on the front. In real life, if you take a look at our camera comparison video, which will be linked in the description below, or you can click on the card to check out that video. In terms of the stills capabilities, I would say that the Pixel 3a is probably better in terms of color rendition, sharpness, and everything like that, even though we have a 48 megapixel standard wide camera in the middle. The OnePlus, I don't see a whole lot of usage in the 48 megapixel stills capabilities. Sure, you can zoom in a little bit more, but you're not actually resolving any more detail that you're not going to see on the Pixel 3a. And the telephoto lens is kind of a throwaway feature too. It's not really rendering out too much. It's good for utilitarian purposes, but nothing for really anything else. Now, in terms of video capabilities, that's definitely a different story. We have 4K at 60 frames per second on the OnePlus versus 30 FPS on the Pixel 3a. And again, if you take a look at our comparison, you are going to notice sharper details, better low light video rendition, and just a better looking image, including double the bitrate on the OnePlus compared to the Pixel 3a. So if you're going to shoot a lot of video, I think the OnePlus has the advantage there. Lastly, let's talk about the battery life. Now, if you take a look at the capacity itself, the 3A XL has a 3700 milliamp hour battery versus 4000 milliamp hours on the OnePlus. Both of them, unfortunately, don't have Qi wireless charging capabilities, which is a real bummer, but they do have fast charging capabilities, which is a handy feature. Did two specific battery drain tests. One is the Geekbench battery benchmarking tool, which we did a full discharge, and we got a score about 6270 points on the OnePlus versus 6130 points on the Pixel. The total runtime was about 10 hours, 27 minutes on the OnePlus versus about 10 hours, 13 minutes on the Pixel. On our video playback test on 60 Hz refresh rate, the OnePlus got a really nice runtime, about 16 hours and 8 minutes, and the Pixel 3a got 16 hours and 26 minutes. That's a record time for us. Now, at 90 Hz refresh rate, the OnePlus definitely eats a little bit more battery life, as we talked about before. Since the GPU and CPU have to be cycling a lot faster. We're looking at 14 hours and 27 minutes. Now, from my personal experience, after a couple of weeks of usage on my specific usage profile, both of these phones last me about a day and a half at best, so they're very similar in terms of real life battery performance, and they're at the top in terms of what the smartphones currently can do right now in terms of battery life, which is an awesome thing. Now, when it comes to the pure value perspective of things, if you get the standard Pixel 3a, which is under $400, that's definitely an amazing smartphone deal, probably the best that you're going to encounter right now. Yes, the internal processing capabilities are not that good, and yes, the display kind of looks a little bit dated in terms of having those larger bezels, especially compared to these crazy looking new smartphones like the OnePlus 7 Pro, but the actual viewing experience is pretty darn decent, again, for the price. Now, the OnePlus 7 Pro starts around $669, and that's still a fairly competitive deal, especially when you compare to stuff like what Apple's charging you for XS Max and what Samsung is charging for whether that's the new Note 10 that's going to come out or the S10 Plus, which is just above the asking price of the 7 Pro. So the 7 Pro is probably the best deal that you're going to find on a premium grade smartphone. Its highlights are definitely the design. The display is awesome. It has the Snapdragon 855 processor like the modern day S10 smartphones from Samsung. So it's fairly powerful, although not as powerful as the new iPhones. I still think people are still going to be fairly happy with it. And the video performance is actually better, as we demonstrated, than at the current generation Pixel phones, which is nice to see. But in terms of still performance, the Pixel 3a is still kind of on top of the game, especially when it comes to the low light. But besides those notions, guys, that's really it. I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Check out the description down below for more details, and make sure you have post notifications turned on. That way you get our videos once they become available. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you later. Take care.